Okay, so I've been setting up to do my project, and one of the things I did was clean and oil my machine. I also picked my thread color for my bobbin, and I filled 12 bobbins with that thread. And so now what I'm doing is making a little test piece so that I can see how I like the way things show up. And as soon as I say something, I find out I'm wrong, but what I'm going to do today is try to take a little bit of this and test my tension and also the visibility of the thread I think I want to use. But so this is one of my interest strips, and so I'm going to put that on here. It's got the really light metallic, and then it's got the dark background, and I'm hoping that this metallic will help blend in with the light tones in this. And so I'm not sure, but that's what I'm going for. And I do want to see some of my stitching, but it will get lost on the metallic. I think this is pretty good tension, which I'm surprised because I've been struggling a little bit lately. But it's amazing what cleaning your machine and really blowing things out can do, and making sure your tension discs on top of your machine don't have a thread caught in there, or a little scrap of a piece of thread. Okay, so I think I want to do this similar to what I did on the inspiration piece, on the wallflowers piece, and that is a sort of a peacocks. I kind of call them peacocks and rivers, or anyway, to me that is this. I don't usually do just one line of stitching and trim it, but this is kind of what I'm doing. I do like there to be distinct areas that hang off the edge, and I'll work on that more with the actual thing. But so this is what I'm going to do for my first 3 strips. And I do recommend that you, whatever shape you're going to do, you're welcome to use mine, but I do think you should practice, and maybe practice for a while, you know, not just for 5 seconds. So I would just do this for a while. I would just do this for a while, you know, and so you're just doing it, and you're going pretty fast, and it's turning out how it turns out, and then with practice you get more adept at having it turn out the way you want. But stop when you're quilting as often as you need to and look at it. Okay, so I think I'm all set up and ready to go. So I'm going to start quilting this. This sewing room has outside of it what my daughter calls a waiting room, but that's because she waits there for me. But it's actually kind of a sitting room. It's a little bigger than the sewing room actually. And there are some different noises now because there's a water cooler and a little refrigerator and stuff like that. And as always, we want the trim to be at least 1/8 of an inch. If you get below that, it really can start to fray all the way back to your stitching. And then that's true with good quality quilting fabrics. If you're using something that's really loose weave, you might need to keep that even further back and possibly double stitch your borders. Okay, and I'm just going to take a little bit of chalk and mark the couple of little things that I'm not that thrilled with. And these will wash out in the washing. This will, but ideally they'll be covered up. And I'm just using white because it'll show. I swear, I'm going to be so organized in this sewing room when I'm done that it'll be hard to even start anything in here because everything you pull out makes a little bit of a mess. There's my first strip, And do you see how the large amount of dark and the modeling everywhere kind of blends to where, and then these kind of areas, which for lack of a better term I'll call laciness, this laciness kind of makes the light metallic and the light in the background kind of obscure with each other, and the dark with the dark, and so it kind of all blends, even though this fabric and this fabric are not the same colors and they're completely different. And I don't think of this background as anything in particular. In fact, it always kind of makes me chuckle when somebody will refer to the stone wall in my wall hanging, or the birds, or the this or the that, when usually I don't do anything that literal. This is, maybe it's vines on a fence, I don't know what it is, or it's really just an organic background for my wall hanging, and it can be whatever you want. Not that you couldn't do a very literal fence with a vine and then put some flowers on it. You know, you could even try to make it look like actual flowers that you could grow on a fence, morning glories or whatever. But that's not what I'm doing. I'm just doing an impression of a sort of leafy thing, and I'll have to decide if these go down or up. And I didn't want to do actual leaves because I'm going to have actual leaves on my flowers, but you could do anything. You could just do strips, and maybe I should do something different. I'm not sure. I may just do mine similar to my inspiration piece, and I'll count on you guys to do all kinds of interesting different things, because there's a lot of people out there who are running with this, and just the things that you guys do are just amazing. So anyway, for these strips we're going to do basically the same process, and so I'm going to get some different colors of thread and see how they look, and I'm going to do a test, and as I do the test I will correct my tension as much as needed. And this thread is the one I used earlier and didn't like it, but I like it on this, and my tension for it, because it's a thicker type of a thread and it's coming off of a different type of spool, it needs to be adjusted completely the opposite of the one that I did before. But so now I've got that all set up. I make sure that the area that I'm going to stitch is nice and flat. I'm starting to get a little shrinkage through here, and so I just want to make sure this part is nice and flat. I'll test along the edge first to make sure I like my stitching, and then I'm just going to go for it. I'll probably do this one and then the other end in the middle. And the reason that I jump around like that isn't really to be systematic. It's so that if my stitching, say, gets a little bit bigger as I go, the biggest one's in the middle. It's not, you know, small, medium, and large as you go over. I did want to let you know there are going to be some new things coming. Like I might do a value video, and I might do some little, you know, videos on tension and cleaning and threading your machine, and so it's very helpful to me if people let me know which of those they're interested in, because it's kind of hard if there is a tiny amount of interest to actually take the time. But sometimes people are interested and I don't realize it. So I trimmed this, and I feel like this right here is pretty boring the way it, and so I'm actually going to take a scrap and I'm going to add a little bit there, and I'm going to take a little bit and maybe do that, and just kind of make it be not quite so straight up and down. So I'm going to see if I can add this one here, and these are just my trimmings. and that one kind of there. And it's little enough, it's going to be kind of fussy, but I'm just going to make it work. So I'm trying to capitalize on some pretty extreme lighting coming in the window, side lighting this right now, and it really shows you, you can always see this because it's, the peacocks have a thread that shows, but here it's hard to see the stitching because the color values in this greenish teal fabric are so mottled, but you can see my stitching here in my seaweed, and I wanted to talk about how I'm going to do this background. This is also very mottled in the background fabric and has a lot of values from dark to light, and so if I use a very dark thread, it won't show very much in the dark areas, but it will show in the light areas, and vice versa. So deciding on the color is important, but people really won't see the thread from a distance. They're going to mainly see it up close, and you can influence this fabric. It would be interesting stitched with black, or a variegated black and gray and white thread or something like that. It would be nice with a color, and I might do that. There are lots of ways it could be done that would be nice, but the main thing that I wanted to talk about is that to make this background rich in terms of the texture, I want to do drifts of stitching. And so I think what I'm going to do is sort of stitch an area, you know, stitch part of it there, stitch part here, run through these open areas, and try to not stitch everywhere. I'm going to leave big areas that are unstitched, and those will be puffy like this is because there's no stitching, and those will be areas that we can come back and stitch later if we want. We can do trapunto there, or we can put one of our holes there, and so I don't want to stitch the whole background, but I am going to do part of it, and I'll do that. I'll pick a thread color and do that. I'm not going to show you that process. I'm probably just going to be lazy and pick one and see how I like it, but then we'll do the flowers and we'll build everything up, and at the end I can come back and add more stitching in the same thread color or another one depending on what I want. But for me, this visual texture is as important as the shapes, the color, and everything else. And as with anything, you know, when you first start writing, you need to learn the letters and be able to form them, and later you can write words, and then it can get as complicated and complex as you want down the road, and you're thinking about things that you didn't even know existed in the beginning. And so if all you can do is just stitch through all this with the easiest stitch you know, because you're still really mastering your free motion quilting, it's going to be beautiful, and just do it. If you want to think more about your values and, you know, how nice it is when the stitching does pop, but that some fabrics that are great for what you want to do don't allow the thread to pop, but you still want your texture to. You know, there are all these different things that you're thinking about, and that's why I really believe that you should listen to just your instinct and what you like, what just makes you feel good when you start to do it, or when you see it on something you've done, start putting it on other things you're doing, because some of it is inexplicable and some of it isn't going to be in your control. But if you trust yourself and you believe in the process of trusting yourself, I just think you're going to have a good time and enjoy it and like your piece a lot better than if you're looking outside for the approval of your weird neighbor who never likes anything you do or whatever. So, or, you know, if you have a significant other who who doesn't get why you do this. There's probably something that that person does that you don't really get, and that's okay. So I am going to stitch some drifts in here, and we'll see how we like them. I will test some threads before I pick one, but I'm just gonna set them on there and go great and try it, see what happens. And if you were curious, this is approximately where I think I'm going to put my flowers. You know, I may not. I'm thinking I'm going to have 3. I may not. Okay, so I've already amended my plan. I'm going to do 2 of the areas differently, where I want to just do vertical lines that kind of contour quilt what's there. And I know that it'll be difficult with this throat to go all the way down, and then I've got varying widths anyway. And so I'm just going to kind of go down and, you know, work my way down. And I think that'll look neat to have a nice long vertical coming through 2 of the areas, and then the rest I'm going to do the way I described. I picked my 2 areas so that they'd be somewhat symmetrical. There's one center area that will be stitched the other way, and then these 2 flank that center area. And I'm just sort of, you know, trying to do a line that is a little bit organic and not too straight, and leaving some nice areas. Now I'm doing my other color, which is aqua, and I'll slow down in a second here to show you some highlights. I particularly want to show you some of the stitching that I'm doing, how I'm trying to skip the voided spots, as well as in some of the cutout areas. And I really am going as fast as I can here. It seemed to be the way that I was always making wall hangings when I was selling them, as quickly as I can. And now that I'm making one to make a tutorial, it's the same thing. I'm just laying down stitches as quickly as I can, trying to not do a whole bunch of bad tension or stitches that look poor quality. And I'm just trying to get the area done. And here I am getting started up again, and I fly through some here. I'm going to skip some so that I can slow down and just show you how I'm finishing out those areas. Here I am going for my 6th bobbin. I do kind of work my way around the piece and then do a bunch of the center at the end, which I did because I noticed that I was starting to get tired as I was quilting, and so I started in one area very tight, and I was purposely making it looser as I went. And it's okay to do that somewhat, but you don't want it to look like, you know, you don't want the different parts to look completely different unless it's deliberate, and there's a good reason for you to do that. And so I kind of start in the upper right hand corner, and I go down that strip, and then I do the next strip, and then I work my way across the bottom and fill out those strips, and then I come back to the center strip and do it from the top down, if that makes any sense. So if you look at this back, even with the imperfections that it has, you can see the areas that have not gotten any quilting yet. And you know, I've tried to leave some everywhere, but some areas I probably left more than others, and that's okay. It doesn't need to be completely consistent throughout, because it's more interesting if it's actually got some variance, but yet it works together. So it's the next day, and I'm not going to get the sunny morning that I want, but I am going to try to get a good shot of this to show all the detail. So here's the piece, and I'm going to put some labels on here so you can see what I've done. This is the way that it goes, with the seaweed kind of facing this way and the peacocks sort of dripping down almost. And then I did my 2 areas where I do sort of a vertical line, and I may fill in the voids that I left because I actually would like it if that vertical with the yellow stitching with the canary yellow was a little more pronounced, but I can always add that later if I want to. And so the 2 on the sides of the center area are the ones that I did with the yellow. And then I did all the others, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas with the aqua thread. And I left a lot of voids in those too, and I hope that you can see those. And next time we will start working on our leaves and our flowers, and I don't know if we'll get those completely on in the same video. I sure hope that you'll join me for that. Thanks.